My boyfriend called me ugly in front of his friends and dumped me at a restaurant, leaving me to pay for the dinner. As he walked away, he loudly said, "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you." I smiled and calmly waited. This morning, my phone blew up with 13 missed calls. You guys, I'm still processing what happened last weekend. Like, I keep replaying it in my head and wondering if I somehow imagined the whole thing. But nope, my maxed out credit card and the ice cream stains on my couch confirm it was very real. For context, I had been with Ryan for 2 years. 2 years. Not some casual fling or whatever. We had the whole routine down. Netflix marathons on Sundays, awkward holiday dinners with both families, even that weird couples yoga class he insisted on trying, which we both sucked at TBH. Things weren't perfect between us. Are they ever? But I thought we were solid. Like, we had talked about maybe moving in together this summer. He had these little annoying habits, leaving his socks literally everywhere, texting during movies, and making these helpful comments about my appearance. Stuff like, "That shirt makes your arms look bigger," or "Have you thought about trying a different hairstyle?" I always brushed it off as him being honest. Ugh, passed me with such a doormat. Last Friday, Ryan texted me about a dinner with some work friends. He had never included me in his work life before, often claiming it wasn't professional. So I was genuinely excited. I even went shopping for a new outfit and spent ages getting ready, following a full YouTube makeup tutorial and using the fancy straightener I reserved for special occasions. When I arrived at this upscale restaurant downtown, one of those places with tiny portions and no prices on the menu, I sensed something was off. Ryan was already there with two coworkers, Leonard and Pablo. As I approached, there was this odd vibe. Ryan barely acknowledged my arrival. He just half stood from his chair and said, "You're late." I was literally 2 minutes late because parking was a nightmare. I sat down and he glanced at my outfit, commenting, "Oh, you wore that." His friends exchanged looks, and I felt my face flush. For the record, I was wearing a dark blue dress that I thought was nice, nothing too crazy or inappropriate. I tried to laugh it off, asking if I had missed some sort of dress code, but he just shrugged and said they had already ordered appetizers. The next hour was filled with Ryan discussing work matters I didn't understand while his friends nodded along. Whenever I attempted to join in, Ryan either interrupted me or explained why I was wrong. At one point, I mentioned a customer from my store, and Ryan cut in with, "She doesn't understand how things work in the real business world," dismissively waving his hand. As if retail isn't a real job, I've been a manager for 3 years. I sat there increasingly uncomfortable, wondering if Ryan had always been this condescending or if he was just trying to impress his friends. Then Leonard asked how we met, and I started sharing the story about how his coworker, Vanessa, my best friend, introduced us. Ryan interrupted mid-sentence, saying, "Yeah, Vanessa felt bad for her." I was doing her a favor, really? And laughed. My stomach dropped. That wasn't even close to how it happened. Vanessa had warned me about Ryan's ego before setting us up, but she also said he was a good guy at heart. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. I excused myself to the bathroom, mostly to avoid crying in front of them. In the stall, I texted Vanessa, "What the heck is happening?" Just then, I got a notification that Ryan had tagged himself at the restaurant on Instagram with "Boys Night Out," as if I wasn't even there. Vanessa called me right away, but I sent her to voicemail because I didn't want the guys to hear me cry. I splashed some water on my face, fixed my makeup, and gave myself a sad little pep talk in the mirror about getting through dinner with dignity. When I returned to the table, they were all laughing about something, but fell silent as soon as I sat down. Great. The waiter brought our main courses, and Ryan kept making jokes about what I ordered. I chose pasta, one of the cheaper options, since I was already anxious about the bill, and he kept saying things like, "Carb loading for a marathon," and "That's a bold choice for someone with your body type." Each comment felt like a paper cut, and they were piling up quickly. At this point, I was barely eating, just pushing my food around and counting down the minutes until I could leave. Then Pablo asked Ryan about some presentation, and Ryan launched into a story about how his boss loved his ideas and that he was basically running the entire project now. Something clicked in my mind. Just the week before, Ryan had been anxious about this same presentation, saying his part was only 5 minutes long and he was nervous. Now, suddenly, he was the star of the show. It felt like he was living in some alternate reality where he was the main character. Then the bill came. The waiter set it on the table, and Ryan picked it up, glanced at it for a moment, and then slid it over to me. I thought he was just showing me the total. But then he said, and I will never forget this, "You know what? I don't think this is working." I stared at him, waiting for a punchline that never came. "I've been trying to make this work, but I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I think we should break up." In the middle of a restaurant, in front of his friends, after 2 years together. Who does that? I was completely blindsided. "Are you serious right now? This is how you want to do this?" He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and said something that still gives me a knot in my stomach. "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you this long. You're not exactly a prize." Then he and his friends left, walking out together, laughing, leaving me there with a $347 bill for their ridiculous Wagyu appetizers and fancy cocktails. The waiter approached with a look of pity that only made everything worse. I paid the bill with my credit card, which I'm still trying to pay off from Christmas, and somehow made it to my car without completely breaking down. In the parking lot, I called Vanessa, sobbing so hard she could hardly understand me. She came straight to my apartment with a pint of Ben & Jerry's and a bottle of wine, my real MVP. Between ugly crying and stress-eating cookie dough, I told her everything. She was furious to the point where I had to talk her out of driving to Ryan's place to confront him. Then she started asking questions about what Ryan had said regarding work, the project he mentioned, and his role in the company. Finally, she said, "Sabrina, I don't know how to tell you this, but Ryan isn't who he says he is at work." It turned out Ryan wasn't some hotshot marketing guy on the verge of a promotion. He was an assistant who made coffee runs and scheduled meetings. All those business trips were complete fabrications. The big presentation? He was just doing the slides for the actual team. The fancy title on his LinkedIn was total fiction. I felt like such a fool. For 2 years, this guy had been lying about nearly everything, and I never questioned it. What else had he been dishonest about? That night, after Vanessa left, I went into full detective mode. I scrolled back through our text messages, our photos, everything. I found so many inconsistencies I had overlooked. Comments about money that didn't add up, times he claimed to be working late while his location showed he was across town. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in the restaurant, remembering how small he made me feel and how humiliated I was. Around 3 a.m., I received a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Cody from Ryan's office. Vanessa gave me your number. There are some things you should know." That's when things took a turn. First, thank you all for the supportive comments on my last post. I literally cried reading some of them, in a good way. Many of you asked for an update, so here's what happened next in this wild situation. After learning from Cody, who works with Ryan, that my boyfriend of 2 years had been living in a fantasy world, I spent the next few days in that awful post-breakup haze. You know the one, alternating between crying into a pint of ice cream and angrily scrolling through old photos, questioning if any of it was real. My apartment looked like a disaster zone. Dishes piled up, laundry everywhere, and about 7 empty DoorDash bags because cooking felt impossible. The worst part was that I kept having moments where I'd think of something funny to text Ryan only to remember what had happened, and it felt like being dumped all over again. My mind was stuck in a loop of, did that really happen? And how did I not see this coming? I had been avoiding social media, knowing Ryan would post something infuriating. But by Wednesday morning, I finally caved and checked Instagram. Sure enough, there was Ryan with a gym selfie captioned, "Level up." Know your worth. The audacity. I almost threw my phone across the room. Vanessa came over that evening with takeout and found me wrapped in my comforter like a sad burrito. She's been incredible through all of this, making sure I eat real food, listening to me rant repeatedly without once saying, "I told you so," even though she had her doubts about Ryan from the start. While we ate, Vanessa showed me her texts with Cody. Apparently, they had been chatting a lot, and he had some juicy details to share. According to Cody, Ryan told everyone at work that he dumped me because I was clingy and always talking about marriage. What? I wasn't the one who made a Pinterest board called Future Home Ideas. Yes, Ryan actually had one, claiming it was research for a work project. Then Cody dropped the real bombshell. Ryan wasn't just lying about his job title, he was on probation for taking credit for others' work and might get fired soon. All those late nights he claimed to be working, he was desperately trying to fix mistakes before anyone noticed. Those business trips, complete fabrications. I was still processing all this when my phone rang. It was Tina, Ryan's mom. I nearly didn't answer. It felt awkward, but I figured I should be an adult about it. Tina had always been incredibly sweet to me, remembering my birthday and genuinely asking about my life. She sounded concerned and asked if everything was okay between me and Ryan. Apparently, he told his family we had a little fight, but that everything was fine. A little fight? The man publicly humiliated me, dumped me in front of his friends, and left me with a massive bill. I tried to keep my response vague, saying we were taking some space because I didn't want to put her in the middle. Then she mentioned Ryan's birthday dinner on Saturday and how the whole family was looking forward to seeing me there. You guys, I nearly choked on my lo mein. Ryan had told his family we were still together and that I was coming to his birthday dinner. It was at his parents' house, and he claimed we had big news to share. After hanging up, I sat in shock while Vanessa looked at me as if I had grown a second head. She asked, "Is he delusional or just a pathological liar?" Honestly, I was wondering the same thing. That's when we devised a plan. I wasn't going to just ghost his family. They had always treated me well, and they deserved to know what kind of person Ryan really was. But I also didn't want to cause a scene or act vindictively. I decided to attend the dinner as invited and let the truth come out naturally. The next day, Cody met me for coffee. It felt slightly awkward since we had only met through Ryan, but he turned out to be really cool. He confirmed everything and added even more details about Ryan's work lies. The team Ryan claimed to lead was actually just him and 2 interns. The big presentation he was in charge of last month? He was merely operating the slideshow while his boss did the presenting. Cody seemed genuinely upset for me, mentioning that he always thought Ryan's stories about me seemed off. Apparently, Ryan would come to work complaining that I was high maintenance, when in reality, I had been paying for most of our dates towards the end because Ryan claimed to be between paychecks. I now realized that probably meant he was terrible with money. Midway through our conversation, Cody received a text from their boss asking if he could come in Saturday evening to help with an emergency project. Cody was bummed because he had plans, but then I had an idea. What if Cody needed to drop something off at Ryan's parents' house during the birthday dinner? The timing would be perfect. As we figured out the details, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, the first one since the restaurant disaster. It simply said, "We need to talk about what happened. I might have overreacted." Might have? I showed it to Cody and he nearly spat out his coffee. Overreacting is when you get annoyed about someone being late, not when you publicly humiliate your girlfriend of 2 years and leave her with a $300 bill. I didn't respond. Let him sweat it out. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. I wasn't going to this dinner unprepared. I dug through old texts, uncovering all the lies, dates when he claimed to be at non-existent work conferences, stories about coworkers that Cody confirmed were fabricated, and even photos Ryan had posted of himself at work events that were actually just downloaded from the company website. Friday night, Vanessa came over to help me choose an outfit. Not gonna lie, part of me wanted to show up looking amazing just to spite him, but we decided the best approach was to look nice without trying too hard. We settled on a simple black dress that Ryan once said made me look average, which I now realized was his weird attempt at neg. I always got compliments whenever I wore it. I barely slept that Friday night. What if this backfired? What if his family sided with him? What if I froze and couldn't go through with it? By Saturday morning, I had chewed my nails down to nothing and envisioned about 17 different scenarios in my head. Around noon, Ryan texted again. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited." I didn't respond to that either. Let him think whatever he wanted. I spent the afternoon getting ready, torn between dread and anticipation. Vanessa helped with my hair and gave me a pep talk when I started to lose my nerve. At 5:30, I got in my car and headed to his parents' house. I had to pull over once because my hands were shaking too much to drive safely. I sat there for a moment, practicing those breathing exercises from that meditation app I downloaded months ago but never used. What was I doing? Was this crazy? Maybe I should just block Ryan on everything and move on with my life like a normal person. But then I imagined him at his birthday dinner, likely telling everyone some fake version of our relationship, maybe even portraying himself as the victim. My resolve hardened. I pulled up to his parents' house at 6:15, fashionably late, which I knew would annoy Ryan. Several cars were already in the driveway. It looked like the whole family was there. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror, took one last deep breath, and walked to the door. Ryan's dad opened it with a big smile and a warm hug, ushering me inside. The house smelled like Tina's famous pot roast, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. I genuinely liked Ryan's family, and this would probably be the last time I'd see them. As I rounded the corner into the living room, there was Ryan, drink in hand, mid-laugh at something his cousin said. He froze when he saw me, clearly not expecting me to actually show up, despite what he had told his family. The look on his face was, well, priceless, to be honest. For a split second, panic flashed across his features before he composed himself and approached me with a fake smile. He gave me a stiff hug and whispered, "You actually came. We need to talk privately." I just smiled and said loud enough for everyone to hear that I wouldn't miss his birthday for anything, especially since he had been telling everyone we had big news to share. The color drained from his face. Tina clapped her hands excitedly and asked if this was what she thought it was. Ryan's sister gave me a knowing look, and his dad started joking about finally getting grandkids. Ryan gripped my elbow a bit too tightly and tried to steer me toward the hallway, but his mom called out that dinner was ready and everyone needed to sit down. As we all took our seats around the dining table, with Ryan anxiously watching my every move, my phone buzzed with a text from Cody. "On my way. 15 minutes out." Ryan leaned over and hissed, "What are you doing here?" I thought after the restaurant. I smiled sweetly and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, I wouldn't miss the chance to tell your family about what happened at that restaurant, Ryan. I'm sure they'd love to hear that story." The look of absolute panic on his face as his mom started bringing out the food, worth every second of anxiety it took to get there. Game on. Now for the second update. I'm finally ready to share what happened at Ryan's birthday dinner. Sorry for the delay. I needed a mental health day after all this drama. Plus, my Wi-Fi has been acting up since my neighbor borrowed my password and apparently downloaded the entire internet. Where did we leave off? Right, me sitting at the dinner table with Ryan's family while he panicked about what I might say. So there I was, surrounded by Ryan's family, his parents, Tina and Ralph, his sister Kayla, his grandma, and two cousins whose names I always mix up. The table was loaded with Tina's famous pot roast, those buttery mashed potatoes I had literally dreamed about, and a fancy salad that nobody would eat but everyone pretended to appreciate. The first 20 minutes were straight up awkward. Ryan kept trying to steer the conversation while shooting me warning glances. I just smiled and passed the bread rolls, enjoying the way his left eye twitched every time I spoke. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. Tina kept the conversation flowing, bless her. She asked about my family, my job, just the usual small talk. When she mentioned how proud they all were of Ryan's big promotion, I nearly choked on my water. I glanced at Ryan, whose face had turned the exact shade of the beets on the table. Ryan jumped in, talking about how his team was crushing their targets and how his boss was practically grooming him for senior management. I nodded along, watching him dig himself deeper with each word. Ralph, who had always been the quiet type, suddenly asked Ryan about the Johnson account. Apparently, Ryan had been telling his dad about some huge deal he was supposedly leading. Ryan's answer was so vague it could have been a horoscope. Something about strategic pivots and leveraging core competencies that literally meant nothing. His sister Kayla caught my eye across the table. She's always been the skeptical one in the family, the type to Google facts during arguments and call people out on their BS. Kayla raised an eyebrow at me as if to say, "Is he for real right now?" That's when Tina brought up the future. She asked us about our big news and whether it had anything to do with taking the next step. Ryan nearly dropped his fork and mumbled something about it not being the right time to discuss it. His grandma, who has zero filter and is my absolute favorite person in the family, chimed in with, "So, are you two moving in together or what? Because Ryan said you were looking at apartments." News to me. The furthest we'd gotten in that conversation was me suggesting, maybe we should think about combining our Netflix accounts to save money. Ryan then tried to steer the conversation back to himself, going on about how his boss had given him a company card for business expenses. I couldn't resist. I asked what kind of expenses he was authorized to approve. He stammered something about client dinners and team outings. That's when I casually mentioned, "Oh, speaking of dinners, Ryan took me to this amazing restaurant last week. What was it called again, honey? The one where you met up with Leonard and Pablo?" The color drained from his face faster than my phone battery during a TikTok binge. Seriously, my phone can't handle more than 20 minutes of scrolling before dying. "Anyone else?" Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Tina went to answer it, and I heard her delighted, "Oh, Cody!" What a surprise! Ryan looked like he might actually pass out. Cody walked in with a folder, looking all professional in his button-up shirt. He apologized for interrupting the birthday dinner, but said he had some work documents Ryan needed to sign urgently for Monday morning. Tina, being the perfect host, immediately invited him to join us for cake later. Ryan tried to usher Cody toward the front door, but Ralph insisted they could handle work stuff right there at the table since we're all family here. Cody sat down in the empty chair beside me, which I had strategically saved, not gonna lie. Ryan was gripping his fork so tightly I thought it might bend. That's when Ralph asked Cody how the big presentation went, the one Ryan had supposedly been leading. Cody looked confused for a second before catching on. He glanced at me, then at Ryan, and I could see him making a decision. Cody said the presentation went well, but clarified that their boss had delivered it, with Ryan and the team providing support. Ralph looked confused and said that wasn't how Ryan had described it. I jumped in because I'm messy like that and asked Cody about Ryan's promotion. Poor Cody looked so uncomfortable, caught between loyalty to a coworker and not wanting to lie to an entire family. He fidgeted with his napkin and said something vague about company restructuring. Ryan interrupted with a fake laugh and tried to change the subject to sports or whatever, but Kayla wasn't having it. She asked Cody point blank what Ryan's current title was. The silence that followed felt like that moment when you drop something in a public bathroom. Everyone hears it, but no one wants to acknowledge it. Cody looked at Ryan, who was silently pleading with his eyes, then at me. I nodded slightly. He cleared his throat and said that Ryan was an administrative assistant in the marketing department. The silence was palpable. Ralph put down his fork slowly, and Grandma made a little humph sound. Kayla muttered something that suspiciously sounded like, "I knew it." Ryan immediately went into damage control mode, claiming Cody was confused, that he had multiple roles, that it was complicated, but the dam had broken. His family started asking specific questions he couldn't dodge. "When did you get promoted?" He hadn't. "Why did you say you had a team?" He didn't. "What about that corner office you mentioned?" Also fictional. With each question, Ryan's stories unraveled more. He kept looking at me as if this was somehow my fault, which only made me more determined to let everything come out. Tina, bless her heart, tried to smooth things over. She suggested we all have some cake and talk about happier topics. As she headed to the kitchen, Kayla asked me directly about the restaurant I'd mentioned earlier. This was my moment. I took a deep breath and laid it all out. How Ryan had invited me to meet his friends, how he'd belittled me throughout dinner, how he dumped me in front of everyone and walked out, leaving me with a $347 bill I could barely afford. Ryan tried to interrupt several times, but his dad silenced him with a look I'd never seen before. Pure disappointment. Ryan's defense? That I was exaggerating and playing the victim. He claimed I embarrassed him in front of his colleagues by not fitting in. and that leaving me with the bill was a lesson in financial responsibility. His grandma actually snorted at that last one. Cody, who had mostly been quiet, finally spoke up. He confirmed my story, adding that he'd heard Ryan bragging to coworkers about how he'd put me in my place. He even pulled out his phone and showed texts from Pablo, receipts discussing what had happened. Tina returned just as Ryan was trying to paint himself as the victim. She set the cake down and asked what she'd missed. No one spoke for a moment. Then Ryan's dad quietly said they needed to have a family discussion about honesty. That's when Ryan exploded, like full-on temper tantrum. He accused me of turning his family against him, called Cody a traitor, and said everyone was just jealous of his success. What success? In his rage, he knocked over his water glass, pointed at me, and yelled that a girl like me should be grateful he even bothered with me. His mom gasped. His grandma muttered something that sounded like old-fashioned swearing. Kayla just shook her head like she wasn't even surprised. Somehow, I stayed calm and said the only thing I was grateful for was finally seeing who he really was. Ryan stormed out, slamming the door so hard that one of Tina's decorative plates fell off the wall and cracked. The aftermath was strangely peaceful. Tina apologized to me like 50 times, while Ralph looked tired and sad. Kayla helped clean up the spilled water. Cody apologized for his part in the awkwardness, but said he couldn't stand by while Ryan lied to everyone. Then, the strangest thing happened. Instead of asking me to leave, they insisted I stay for cake. We all sat there, Ryan's ex-girlfriend, his co-worker, and his family, eating birthday cake without the birthday boy. In any other situation, it would have been the most awkward thing ever, but somehow it wasn't. After cake, I helped Tina clean up in the kitchen. She kept apologizing, saying she had no idea Ryan had been lying about so much. She seemed genuinely heartbroken, not just about what he'd done to me, but about who her son had become. I felt bad for her, to be honest. No parent wants to realize their child is, well, kind of terrible. She quietly asked if there had been signs before, and I admitted that looking back, there were red flags I'd ignored because I wanted to believe the best of him. When I was getting ready to leave, Ryan's dad pulled me aside. He thanked me for my honesty and apologized for what his son had done. He seemed so defeated, like he was trying to figure out where they'd gone wrong in raising him. I assured him it wasn't their fault. Ryan had made his own choices. Cody offered to walk me to my car, probably sensing I needed a moment to process everything. As we walked down the driveway, he mentioned that Ryan had been having problems at work for months, taking credit for other people's ideas, lying about his contributions, even faking emails from clients. He was actually on his final warning before potential termination. Suddenly, Ryan's desperate need to appear successful made a twisted kind of sense. His entire identity was built on this fake image of success and status. When I thought about it that way, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I thanked Cody for having my back and drove home in a strange state of emotional exhaustion mixed with relief. It felt like finally taking off an uncomfortable bra at the end of the day. Sorry for the weird analogy, but you know what I mean. When I got home, I saw I had 3 missed calls from Vanessa wanting updates. Just as I was about to call her back, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked his number and made myself some tea. I should have been scared or upset, but honestly, I just felt tired, and maybe a little proud of myself for standing up to him. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But this morning, my phone blew up with 13 missed calls from Ryan's mom, his sister, Cody, and several numbers I didn't recognize. Something had happened overnight, and based on the increasingly frantic voicemails, Ryan had completely lost it. Last update. I'm finally ready to explain those 13 missed calls. Thanks for being patient while I processed everything. Also, sorry for the delay. My laptop decided to do a surprise 4-hour update right when I sat down to write this. So, where were we? I woke up Sunday morning after the birthday dinner disaster to find my phone going off with calls from Ryan's family and Cody. At first, I genuinely thought someone had died. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through the notifications. 5 missed calls from Tina, 3 from Kayla, 2 from Cody, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I called Tina back first, as she seemed the most worried based on her voicemails, which were all variations of, "Sabrina, please call me as soon as you can." She picked up on the first ring, sounding exhausted. Apparently, after Ryan stormed out of the birthday dinner, he had gone on a complete bender. He showed up at his ex-girlfriend's apartment at 2 a.m., drunk and ranting about how I'd ruined his life. The ex, who I didn't even know existed, was understandably freaked out and called Kayla to pick him up. But that wasn't all. Ryan had spent the night sending unhinged messages to practically everyone we knew. He texted Cody, threatening to ruin him at work. LOL, good luck with that when you're about to get fired. He also posted a long, rambling status on Facebook about how he was surrounded by snakes and that people would regret betraying him. Most concerning was that he posted my address in a private message to his friend Pablo, saying he was going to make me pay for humiliating him. Pablo, who apparently has some moral compass, immediately called Tina and forwarded the message, which is why she was trying so desperately to reach me. I was sitting on my couch in my ratty old pajamas, hair still in yesterday's messy bun, trying to process all this while Tina apologized about 50 times for her son's behavior. I should have felt scared, I guess. But honestly, I just felt tired, like when your phone is stuck at 1% battery for hours, just waiting for it to finally die so you can charge it and move on. Tina insisted on coming over to make sure I was okay, which was super sweet, but also made me panic clean my apartment. Nothing motivates tidying up like knowing someone's mom is about to see your living space, right? I was literally throwing dirty laundry into my closet and scrubbing dried toothpaste off the bathroom sink when the doorbell rang. It wasn't just Tina, Kayla was with her. They brought coffee and those little pastries from the bakery near their house, which, not gonna lie, might be what I miss most about being with Ryan. We sat at my tiny kitchen table, which had a wobbly leg I'd been meaning to fix for months, as they filled me in on the Ryan situation. According to Kayla, this wasn't the first time Ryan had lied about his life. In college, he'd told everyone he was on the baseball team when he'd actually been cut during tryouts. He'd once claimed to be talking to a popular girl who had no idea who he was. There was a whole pattern of him creating a fictional version of himself that was more successful, more popular, more everything. As they spoke, my phone kept buzzing with texts from friends who had seen Ryan's social media meltdown. Vanessa was freaking out, wanting to come over with her boyfriend who does kickboxing, just in case. She watches too many crime shows, I swear. My group chat was blowing up with confused messages about the dramatic subtweets Ryan was posting. That's when my doorbell rang again. I literally froze, wondering if it was Ryan. Kayla peeked through the blinds and let out a long breath. It was Cody. Apparently, Ryan had been blowing up his phone all morning too, and Cody wanted to warn me in person since Ryan had mentioned paying me a visit. So there we were. Me, Ryan's mom, his sister, and his coworker sitting in my living room on a Sunday morning, trying to figure out what to do about this man-child throwing a tantrum because he got caught in his lies. If it wasn't so stressful, it would have been hilarious. Like, imagine explaining the situation to someone who wasn't there. Cody mentioned that their boss had already gotten wind of Ryan's social media tirade. Someone had screenshotted and forwarded it. So, Monday at work was going to be interesting. Kayla was worried Ryan might do something stupid if he lost his job on top of everything else. That's when my doorbell rang again. This time, it was the building manager, looking super awkward. Apparently, Ryan had been downstairs making a scene in the lobby, demanding to be led up to my apartment. The manager had refused and threatened to call the police, at which point Ryan had stormed off, but not before yelling that I was a lying bitch loud enough for the entire first floor to hear. Tina looked devastated. She kept apologizing, saying she didn't know where they went wrong with him. I felt terrible for her. Imagine realizing your adult son is basically a walking red flag. Kayla was more practical, suggesting I document everything in case Ryan's behavior escalated. We were all sitting there trying to figure out what to do when my phone buzzed with a notification. Ryan had tagged me in an Instagram story. Against my better judgment, and with everyone in the room telling me not to look, I opened it. It was a photo of me from early in our relationship, sleeping on his couch with my mouth open, captioned, "Miss Perfect who ruined my birthday isn't so perfect." A girl like you should be grateful anyone took pictures of you at all." Was that his big revenge? A slightly unflattering photo from 2 years ago. I actually laughed out loud, which wasn't the reaction Tina was expecting. But honestly, if that was the worst he could do, I was going to be fine. Just as we were discussing next steps, there was a loud pounding on my door. We all jumped. Then we heard Ryan's voice, slurring slightly. "I know you're in there. Open the door." Cody immediately stood up like he was going to confront Ryan, which was sweet but unnecessary. I was already calling the building security guard, perks of living in a slightly more expensive apartment building. Ryan kept pounding and yelling, and I could hear my neighbor's door open as she came out to see what the commotion was about. By the time security arrived, Ryan had moved on to kicking the door. The security guard didn't mess around. He told Ryan to leave or he'd call the police. There was some back and forth that I couldn't quite make out, then silence. The guard knocked gently and informed me that Ryan had left the building but was still in the parking lot, possibly waiting. Tina was mortified and insisted on going down to deal with her son herself. Honestly, I was relieved to let her handle it. She was so upset that Ralph, Ryan's dad, had to come pick them both up. The whole situation felt just sad. After they left, Cody and I sat on my couch in stunned silence for a bit. He finally broke the silence by asking if I had any alcohol, which felt like the appropriate response to the morning we'd had. We split a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, and this definitely counted. By the time Cody left, it was late afternoon, and I was emotionally exhausted. Vanessa came over and stayed the night, just in case Ryan decided to make a return appearance. Thankfully, he didn't. We ordered pizza, watched bad reality TV, and tried to process the absolute soap opera my life had become. The next few weeks were an adjustment. Ryan got fired from his job after failing to show up for 3 days and sending inappropriate emails to several coworkers. He moved back in with his parents temporarily, which I only know because Kayla and I have kept in touch. She's actually pretty cool. We grab coffee sometimes. Ryan tried to contact me a few more times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to tearful to weirdly nostalgic. I saved them all just in case, but never responded. He even created a few fake Instagram accounts to message me, but they were so obviously him. Who else would write, "You're making a big mistake with that spelling error"? I blocked them instantly. The weirdest part was running into him at Target about a month later. I was in the home section looking at shower curtains when suddenly there he was, holding a pack of socks and looking like he hadn't slept in days. We made eye contact, and for a second, I thought he might cause a scene. Instead, he just turned around and walked away, leaving his shopping basket right there in the aisle. That was 3 months ago now. Ryan eventually moved to his uncle's place in another state, according to Tina, who still sends me holiday cards. It's sweet but also awkward. His social media has gone suspiciously quiet. Kayla thinks his parents finally cut him off financially until he gets therapy. As for me, I'm doing pretty well, actually. My apartment finally feels like mine again now that I've rearranged the furniture and replaced the stuff that reminded me of Ryan. The strangest outcome of all this might be my unexpected friendship with Cody. We're not dating or anything, though Vanessa keeps trying to make that happen. But we grab lunch sometimes and text about silly TikTok videos. It's nice having someone who witnessed the whole Ryan saga and understands why I now have trust issues the size of Texas. Looking back at everything, I'm not angry anymore. Well, not just angry. I'm also weirdly grateful. Not for dating Ryan, definitely not that, but for finding out who he really was before things went further. Imagine if I'd moved in with him or something. Shudder.